So here we go then. Race number 1 of the second round-robin stage of the Louis Vuitton America's Cup qualifiers. The opening race of the day, New Zealand and Sweden, and scores to settle in the pre-start, Ken, as important, perhaps more important than any other part of the race.
Yeah, here comes that typical hunting, pushing. They're very early back to the starting line. New Zealand's getting chased away by Artemis. Artemis is sensing a bit of a kill here right now. They're very close to the starting line. Instead, they decide to gap off. Can they still bear away and go under New Zealand? I doubt it. So this is probably where they're going to sit and try to accelerate from there.
Swedes, of course, remember suffering that penalty at the start against New Zealand, not just the late one. They had to recover.
All about acceleration, getting up on the foils at the proper time and pure acceleration. This is just kind of a clean boat speed start. Let's see who's the fastest on this first reach.
Body's down. Pressure is coming to you at this angle.
Both teams pulling the trigger as they hit the start line and up on the foils, tearing across the water in fine style towards that first mark.
Artemis with a tiny bit of a speed advantage here, a little better angle coming from that right-hand end of the starting line. Maybe all they needed to poke out in front very quickly.
Plan A, 1 and in left.
Well, we know the Swedes have excellent boat speed. They took a very similar line to the one that Dean Barker and SoftBank Team Japan threaded yesterday, and they are round the first mark with a slender advantage from the Kiwis.
Exactly what we should have heard from Nathan Outteridge in the opening of this show. We have to take this out of the umpire's hands. We have to sail cleaner and smarter. 2 penalties in that race yesterday. 2 penalties against Emirates Team New Zealand. You're almost never going to win.
Head up.
So the first jibe from the Swedes on these beautiful crystal clear waters. The maneuverability of these boats, just something to behold up close and personal, but it is so key that those maneuvers are clean, otherwise you do lose plenty of meters, even with the smallest of errors.
This is about the lay line into this mark right now. Are they going to fetch the gate? There's the gate right out in front of them. Are they going to be able to go straight into that gate or jibe one more time? If they jibe one more time, Emirates Team New Zealand is in kind of a good position. They had a better jibe and actually put themselves in a really nice spot.
We like the left mark.
Remember, we saw 9 passes yesterday. So it wouldn't be shocking if we saw pass number 1 on this early in the race.
Well, it was one of the all-time great America's Cup races, wasn't it? And when you've got boats moving at this kind of pace, with this sort of competitive fire, you really do have some wonderful top-level sport. Just look at the way they are taking each other on.
I think this is a bit of a lay line call. Look at that. Wow. Oh, it got very loose and went from ahead to behind in a heartbeat. Their weather rudder came out of the water. They get a lot of grip from that weather rudder. When they flew a hull so high, the weather rudder came out of the water, and they just literally lost control.
What are you thinking, Kate? What's your plan? We've got to go right.
Well, it has really allowed the Swedes to steal a march here, and they are tearing around the gate and heading upwind for the first time in the race. The Kiwis with a lot to think about, a lot to rectify, and a lot of ground to make up.
One mistake will be 400 meters.
Good pressure.
So let's have another little look at exactly what happened there to Emirates Team New Zealand. It was not pretty.
So their weather rudder comes out of the water, they get too high, they have no more grip. What else happened there, I'm not 100% sure, but man, it got loose fast. It just could have been a little wing wash there too. It could just be bad air from Artemis. They got them a little out of sequence very quickly because they're very close. You're looking at a couple possible luffs. Burling was being aggressive. He was going to try to maybe give a little bit of a push, a little bit of a luff he has right away in that situation. there's any number of things that could have gone wrong, but the bottom line is it did go wrong.
Goodness gracious. Let's bring in Lee McMillan, who's, of course, part of the British outfit out here in Bermuda, but he's on the water side for us this afternoon, keeping a check on all things to do with conditions. But what about that, Lee? What did you make of the Kiwis' plunge there?
Yeah, well, that was pretty interesting there. Like you said, it looked like the Kiwis were just starting to push for a bit of a luff as we approached the leeward gate, and the rudders just kind of gave way. They got pretty sensitive rudders on that boat, and a little bit of instability, and the rudders were gone, and they lost control. So it was pretty touch and go, and it looked like Artemis were getting into a bit of a tight spot there with the luff, but the rudders kind of giving way. Yeah, put an end to that.
40 knots and your rudders give way. How's that?
I'll tell you what, those cyclones suddenly got a rather early shower, didn't they? They got an absolute pounding as the boat nosedived.
Let's bring Lee back in for a minute. Lee, it's interesting for people. Oh, sorry.
So let's have another word with Lee McMillan on the water.
Lee, we have these weather rudders that actually create grip, and we probably haven't done a great job of telling people about that. So can you tell us why just tell our people at home why the weather rudders create grip and why that's so important for these boats?
Okay. Sorry, I can't hear you, Greg.
I don't think we've got Lee hooked up quite right just yet. We'll get back in communication with him very shortly. So in the meantime, the Kiwis doing a pretty decent job of closing the gap here, Ken.
A little bit lighter air today. We're not seeing those extreme speeds. And yesterday we saw the Swedes consistently going faster on the upwind legs. Today we see something a little different. And again, changing the moding slightly on these boats from day to day is dramatic, but yesterday we saw just the opposite. We saw the Swedes going faster upwind all the time. Today, so far, we've seen the Kiwis going faster upwind all the time.
So they had a pretty consistent 4-knot advantage generally, wasn't it, upwind yesterday, the Swedes?
Could have been a wider angle. I mean, it's called VMG, velocity made good. It's how fast you go and how close to the wind you go at the same time. It's that combination of the two factors that's so critical. You can go the same angle and faster, that's good. And it looks like the Kiwis are kind of doing that right now. Artemis will lay this gate, though, and be next around, but this has all of a sudden gotten to be a very close race. The Kiwis are going quick.
Into gate 3 as they head downwind once more. Good speed from both of these teams. And a smooth rounding of the gate as well. Tearing across the sound, aren't they? 33, 34 knots, and the New Zealanders not losing too much of their boat speed as they maneuver either.
So, Lee, can you tell us, every day the setups of these boats are different. Everybody's still experimenting, trying new things. Is there anything you see obvious between these two boats today than yesterday, that from an overall setup, from a moding standpoint?
Well, yeah, one of the obvious things is Artemis have their light wind boards on their longer tips, which give them more lift, but the top speeds will be slightly lower. So compared to yesterday, where they had their kind of medium tips on, the top speeds were a lot higher, but I think a lot of the teams are expecting the wind to be a little bit lighter by this stage of the day. And obviously Artemis have got 2 races, so trying to hedge their bets across the 2 races, they've got the longer tips on. So we might see New Zealand just being a little bit more competitive on the overall speeds today compared to yesterday.
And for those at home, it's this part of the wingtips that we're talking about. In general, the longer the wing, the longer that span right there, the lighter air it's for. The shorter that span, the windier conditions that are for. And it's obvious, more drag, but more lift, the bigger they get.
Another jibe from the Kiwis as they head down to that bottom gate, but the Swedes just beginning to stretch out here.
Another part of having the longer dagger boards on, the longer wing tips, is definitely more stability in tacks and jibes. We've seen that so far. The Kiwis are ripping. They'll do a split here. They jibed early in order to do a nice split, and they're going to be able to go upwind in their own clear air. They lose that weather rudder out of the water again, though.
This is interesting because over the course of the first couple of days of racing here in Bermuda, Ken, we have seen real stability and control in so many of the New Zealand manoeuvres. Around the gates, they've been very slick, probably the slickest of the lot. And yet today, they just look a little bit less stable.
Lee, where do we think we're going with the New Zealand boat today? Do we think we see the light or the breezy boards in the New Zealand boat?
Well, the interesting thing with kind of Emirates Team New Zealand is they have quite a big range with their boards. So they have quite long tips on their boards, but they're actually, they seem to be able to take them up range. So they've managed to kind of get the overall drag of those boards down a bit. So we do see that the Kiwis are able to actually span quite a big range of conditions with the same tips, which is quite an advantage, I guess, when these difficult config calls come up.
And why do you think we've seen, it's pretty rare we've seen anybody actually lose their weather rudder coming out of the water. So we'll come back to you here in a minute, Lee, once we get these a couple crosses going.
Yet again, we are seeing a terrific race between these two. Yesterday's was something to behold, and so much excitement across the course. It is setting itself up once again to be a pretty tight finish. There is not a whole lot between them.
Just inside you go.
Going back down on the water to Lee McMillan from the BAR program. And Lee, why do you think we've seen Emirates Team New Zealand actually pop that weather rudder out of the water, which we know grips? So it's such a big part of the grip of the boat and keeping the stability in check. Why have we seen it pop out of the water twice today? It's something we haven't seen very much.
Well, I mean, they have been using those rudders before, so there's no difference there. But all of these rudders and these boats are sailing wide on the edge, and it just takes very small differences. Maybe getting the boat, just the actual ride height a little bit higher than normal, brings the elevator right close to the surface, and that can be the difference. And that happens a couple of times, and the boat will just spin out. And you know, it's pretty full on when you're at the wheel of these things, and that happens. You just completely lose control of the boat, and you're trying to get the flow reattached as that's happening, doing kind of 40 knots. So it's yeah, it's pretty intense. But they did a really good job in that last one of actually being able to kind of stay on the foil and bring it back in and get control again, which is you know, quite impressive to see.
Thank you, Lee. Yes, and your point illustrated by our fly time graphic with the Swedes yet to touch down.
Yeah, but that would be absolutely what Lee's talking about. Those long boards give you a much bigger opportunity to get around the race course with that elusive 100% fly time number.
Oh dear, you jinxed it.
It's the old commentator's jinx, or whatever
you were going to do that. Just when we were getting overexcited.
Sorry, Artemis. My bad.
It'll happen at some point. The 100% fly time.
This is a close race. These guys are going quick, especially upwind. The same thing on the last upwind leg we saw. The Kiwis coming into Artemis a little bit. On starboard tack coming across here. It looks like Artemis should get across, but it's not going to be by much. I'll tell you that. If they do, this might be very close.
And they've become very well acquainted with each other, haven't they, these two, in the last couple of days?
We're
yet
going to see a button pushed right there. I'd be very surprised if we didn't see a protest by the Kiwis going into that cross, and they're going to lay the gate. They're going to get around here first. Very, very solid effort by the Kiwis to pull off not only a pass, but to get through the gate and get out first.
New Zealanders stealing their way in front as they head off downwind again. But look at the boat speed of the Swedes here, really ripping it.
Not a great jibe on the Swedes right there. Actually, kind of a bad jibe. They got it all out of kilter there. It was really slow.
So we understand that there may well have been a penalty there, which accounts for the speed slowdown. They have to slow down and get 2 boat lengths behind the boat in front, and so that would explain what we just saw there, Ken.
Well, this is coming the reach into the finish. That's exactly right. It's amazing how we've become so addicted to the graphics of modern-day race course. This is, to me, that was a blatant dip by the Kiwis. That absolutely was a foul. They were on starboard tack, the right-of-way boat. The Swedes not only very likely fouled the Kiwis, but they didn't make the gate. They had to tack, get around, and all of a sudden another pass between these 2 boats. It's hard to see how much they actually bore off there, but the overhead view showed a fair chunk. They're reaching toward the finish right now, out in front. Ali, it's another protest and another umpire decision that in effect has showed the outcome of another race between New Zealand and Sweden. I think they got it right this time, though.
Well, it's going to end up making the difference, isn't it? And the Kiwis getting the benefit of these calls. The rub of the green, if you like, but you make your own luck in the America's Cup.
I'm guessing
New Zealanders are making theirs right now.
Yeah, both of these teams will not be very pleased. They both had some unforced errors and things to go back and look at, but if you're the Kiwis, this is a bit of redemption and making up for actually, no, this is 2-0 for the Kiwis. Sorry, I had this reversed. Wow.
So the New Zealanders hurtling across the line for yet another win. That's their 5th in this regatta, and a decision going their way. Quite an error on the second leg, but they've recovered really, really well, and right now they are looking like the chief contenders in the America's Cup qualifiers. Sweden taking their foot off the gas at this point with the result confirmed. It doesn't really matter how far behind they are, so a little bit of conservation of energy, bearing in mind they also race in race number 3 today against the British. Not much time to rest up, and they will be straight back out on the water. But to have gone down twice in the space of 24 hours will not be pleasing to Nathan Outridge and his crew.
Interesting that we all watch the clock in the bottom right-hand corner here, and it's really just semantics. It's who beats who. So the actual number there in the corner never really makes for anything. It's not a tiebreaker or anything like that. It's just really a more for show to give you an idea of how tight or not tight a race may be. And in this one, it's going to look not very tight, but as we all know, that last-minute penalty was one of the major factors in the win again for Emirates Team New Zealand.
So another setback for Artemis Racing, the Swedish team with their 4th defeat